And that's where we want to welcome in our first guest, retired Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke. David, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
So this whole birthright argument, the president says that, that this is really a problem, that he's going to absolutely do something about it. We know that if he does try, of course, there will be court proceedings. It'll end up, without a doubt, in the Supreme Court. What's your ultimate prediction on how this thing plays itself out?
The president is right on this. He's going to prevail at the Supreme Court level. This concept of universal birthright citizenship is a misinterpretation of the 14th Amendment. I happen to have my pocket constitution here, and here's what the court will really zero in on. It says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That's the key phrase. What that means, and I want to get this right, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, meaning owes an allegiance to the United States and not some foreign power. People who are in the country illegally do not own allegiance to the United States. They own allegiance to a foreign power. That's what the courts will have to decide. But anybody out there saying, including Paul Ryan, he is flat out wrong. The Congress and the Supreme Court, neither of them have ever addressed the issue of birthright citizenship for illegal alien children. It has never been addressed. It will now. Kudos to the President of the United States, because this concept of universal birthright citizenship leads to chain migration, and he's going to put an end to that too.
Well, and in fact, there is case law of this being challenged before, and it was American Indians, in fact, that wanted their children to fall in underneath that clause, and the courts actually rejected that. So certainly we know that the intention of the writer, as there is a lot of, the Library of Congress holds his thoughts and his writings on what he meant when he wrote the 14th Amendment, and he himself said that he didn't intend for it to apply to, for example, the children of ambassadors who are living on American soil, for foreign people, and he actually used the word foreign in that. And so, you wonder what the court will actually consider when they're looking at all of this.
I heard Andy McCarthy, the former federal prosecutor, talking about this, and I think a lot of us agree that the founders had no concept of what the immigration system would look like in 2018, and perhaps it does need to be addressed, and I think the president's right raising this concern, but how it's presented and how it actually gets to the Supreme Court might make a big difference on how the justices actually rule. If this is something that comes from an executive order, McCarthy says it would be more difficult, even with the conservative justices on the bench, to get them to sign off on that. It would be a lot easier, he thinks, if it does come down to a Supreme Court, if it came in the form of a bill in legislation. And that's, again, why these midterms are so important. You have Lindsey Graham, the senator, offering to sponsor legislation that would address birthright citizenship. But Sheriff Clarke, do you think it might be better, and I think President Trump tweeted today that however it comes about, this needs to happen, if he would have maybe partnered with some members of Congress like Lindsey Graham and say, we're going to do this and we're going to push this through, and it's another reason why you should get out and vote in the midterms?
Well, here's the problem with the Congress. The Congress has had over 30 years. The Congress had the last 2 years, GOP Congress, to do something about this broken illegal immigration system. And once again, in the first 2 years of the Trump administration, kicked the can down the road. They treat this thing, they approach it, they run from it like it's the plague. So it would have been very difficult for the president ahead of time to try to partner with certain members of Congress. Congress has not shown the will to want to do anything to fix this system. But the three cases that were mentioned, there's the Indian case, there's the Slaughterhouse 5 case, and I think the other one is Wong Kim Ark, dealt with permanent legal status. These people had permanent legal status in the United States, and that was the issue before the court. The parents of illegal aliens or children are not permanently in the United States, are in the states illegally, and so that's what the court's going to have to zero in on. But there's no way, as far as I'm concerned, that a court with a straight face, the Supreme Court, can say the founding fathers intended for people illegally in the country to be given birthright citizenship.
Yeah, that's kind of a almost ridiculous sounding statement on its face. Anyway, the other big story, Sheriff, that we're following right now is the Migrant Caravan making its way, of course, to our southern border. And there's more than one, as you know. Now, right now, the caravans, this one in particular that's coming closer to the border, formed in Honduras about 2 weeks ago. And it's about 1,000 miles now from the U.S. border, and it's covering about 20 to 30 miles each day, with some members on foot and some riding in trucks and other vehicles, but at a walking pace.
Now, the Pentagon says there are more than 5,000 troops that are on their way to the U.S.-Mexico border. Officials say they don't know what the final number would be, and they don't know yet how much it's going to cost. But so far, about 1,000 troops are on the ground in Texas. They will be backing up Customs and Border Patrol. And this comes after the president said the migrant caravan coming to the border is a national emergency. Sheriff Clarke, ultimately, how important do you think these troops on the border are going to be in impacting the final outcome of what happens with the caravan?
As a force multiplier, they're going to be very important and very integral. Sure, they won't be down there enforcing law and making arrests, but if these numbers show up at the border all at once, and look, this abuse at our southern border has got to stop, but if they show up all at once and try to storm their way in, it's going to overwhelm the Border Patrol and overwhelm the National Guard, who do have law enforcement authority, and they're going to need force multipliers. So that's what the military is for. Look, this is a political construct. It was a political construct when it left Honduras. If these people were actually looking for asylum, by the principle of asylum, they were supposed to declare asylum or ask for it, request it, in the first country they set foot in after leaving their own. That would have been Guatemala, and they even could have done it in Mexico. The Mexican government has offered them asylum. They're not interested. That's why I said this is a political construct. It was an ambush on the president, but the president is handling this very well. He's in consultation with the leaders of those three countries. He also is in consultation with his advisors, who will propose policy options. You don't tell a president what to do. You give him the information. You give him policy options. You can do A, B, or C, and here's the pluses and minuses of both, and you let the president make the decision because it's his decision alone. That's what's going on. He's doing a masterful job of this. This is stuff that people doubted he'd be able to do as president of the United States, but he's outdoing any of his predecessors who just kicked the can down the road on this issue, and like with North Korea as well, you know, figuring out they leave it for some other president down the road. This president doesn't do this. He's about results. He's about fixing things. He's about getting things done.
Sheriff, you know, we just had Sheriff Joe Arpaio here on the show, and he said he sent military into Mexico to help with his border situation in his state of Arizona. He said he doesn't see any reason why the president can't do that. Just send military troops right into Mexico and stop them before they ever get across America, across the border. What are your thoughts on that?
People who know what they're doing here. If you come off as a loose cannon, you could screw things up. This president has shown that he is not that, and he's not going to screw this up. But he's made it very clear. He's made it very clear. And what he's trying to do, really, I think with the birthright, throwing that out there, is he's trying to prod the Congress into acting, for heaven's sakes. Yeah. They will not act on this issue. They're afraid. They're all looking for political leverage out of this, but that's not in the best interest of the United States. So what someone might suggest that the president could do, I'll leave that to them. But I trust this president. I trust the way he's going about it. And the decisions that he makes will be sound, and the decisions that he makes will be in the best interest of the United States, not his political future.
Well,
I'm not going to defend what President Obama did, and I can't believe this sounds a little crazy, but that's almost the same argument that he used for DACA, that Congress won't do anything, so we have to act as the executive branch. And again, this is not a defense of what President Obama did or an indictment on what President Trump is doing, but it does show that Congress, as you said, Sheriff Clarke, doesn't really want or have the political will to address the immigration issue.
No, I think it's completely different from what Obama did with his pen and his phone. The president knew, President Obama knew he didn't have the authority to grant amnesty to illegal aliens. That's not what this president is doing in terms of birthright citizenship. There is precedent, and he does have constitutional authority, and it's narrowly defined. There's no doubt about that. But he's not undoing the Constitution with this. There's precedent for it. And like I said, the Supreme Court and the Congress have never opined on the birthright citizenship of illegal aliens. So it's time to have that conversation, time to have that discussion. This will end up in the Supreme Court. But again, President Obama, it was ruled, didn't have the authority to grant amnesty to this and set up this DACA program. The president came in and undid it. It was unconstitutional by the courts. And then a court said, no, Mr. President, you have to enforce this unconstitutional act. And that's a violation of the separation of powers, I believe. So, but it's good that this stuff's coming to a head because it needs to, so we have clarification moving forward on what the law is, what the Congress intended, what the founders intended. And then we can go about fixing this broken illegal immigration system. But like I said, they squandered 2 years with control of both chambers of the Congress and a president in the White House who gave them a 4-pillar approach. He made a recommendation. He didn't do it with a pen in his phone and say, I'm going to enact this. He said, here's the start. He gave the 4 pillars, and Congress did nothing with it.
Yeah.
They don't do anything.
Great point. We'll see what happens after the midterms. Sheriff David Clarke, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more live breaking news coverage, exclusive interviews, and videos from Newsmax TV, click subscribe on our YouTube channel, and don't forget to download the free Newsmax TV app for alerts. Newsmax TV, it's real news for real people.